Welcome to Trinity Tours. There's a story behind the shot. These are taken from our photo and video archives recorded on our trips every summer. On this episode, Orca Encounters of Trinity, Newfoundland and Labrador. The orcas filmed at Trinity are the apex predator. Intelligent, beautiful, and possibly the deadliest predator in the ocean, even deadlier than the great white shark, which actually may be one of its prey. The following footage was documented in 2010 by a group of orcas on a single minke whale. During this observation period, we never realized that the minke was even on the scene. It was being held underwater by the orcas in an attempt to drown it. When it does surface, it is upside down and being held head first by at least one orca. A big male moves in to hold the tail, which he loses a grip on. The minke's final death throes culminate with a trail of blood as the group begins to feed on the carcass. While shocking and disturbing as this was, it was an insight into the daily lives and feeding habits of orcas. About 2 hours later, we filmed this jumping orca. It must have been a display of joy for feasting on the minke. Certainly it looked like a happy, exuberant display of energy. These highly intelligent and adaptive creatures are an enigma to watch. It's hard to believe that we ever entertained the thought to capture them and put them in tanks for our viewing pleasure. Killer whales in captivity only live half as long as wild orcas. While there have been several attacks and deaths associated with killer whales in captivity, there are no documented cases of them attacking a human in the wild. Certainly, we could be viewed as prey, the same as a swimming moose or a polar bear. But orcas make that distinction. Do they recognize a species that is more dominant than they are? Do they recognize or even respect us? It seems that they do draw the line in viewing humans as prey. Several videos have been posted of people swimming with orcas. I may try it myself this year, given the opportunity. Orcas are recognizable as male and female through the shapes of their fins. Females typically have a distinguishable arch and curve that follows both sides of their sail or dorsal fin. Mature males have the back portion of their fin straight, with the leading edge being straight and angled from the front. Older males can have a straight leading edge with a curved back. Orcas are recognized in two distinct categories: resident and transient groups. Resident groups are small fish feeders that prey upon species like salmon or herring, like pods of whales in Iceland and British Columbia. There is a third category of offshore orcas that typically do not hug the coastline but remain at sea. The transient groups are large prey hunters that eat other whales, seals, sea lions, turtles, and moose have also been found in the stomachs of orcas. Occupying all oceans of the world, orcas seem to flourish in colder Arctic, Antarctic climes. Our orca group around Newfoundland and Labrador are transient, large prey predators. They can travel large distances, up to 500 kilometers a day. Also, orcas may follow migratory species for food, which may explain why we have a tendency to see them in late July and August, and into the fall when whale populations are at their peak. Some trains of thought suggest that the orcas of this area may actually move around Greenland and Iceland and the far reaches of the North Atlantic. In this group this summer, there are at least 2 young calves. It seemed that a younger female tended the youngsters while the group was hunting. You can see them here. They generally had the most interest in the boat and its occupants. The 2 orca groups were approximately 8 and 20 in number on 6 different occasions. Adults consume 3 to 4% of their weight daily, with the young consuming about 10%. The large groups, that represents a great amount of food to be hunted on a daily basis. This may explain why some orcas are transient, while others are resident, eating local schooling fish such as salmon, herring, and squid. Transients may have to travel larger distances to find enough food. These orcas seem fearless and curious by nature. In this footage, one of the orcas actually slaps the bottom of this fiberglass boat, which causes the driver to take off from the area, a little bit concerned. Male orcas give birth usually every 3 to 5 years. Their gestation period is approximately 17 months. Life expectancy of orcas in the wild are 50 to 80 years, with the oldest recorded age to be at 103. Their birthing rates may have a lot to do with food availability and their travel patterns. Large pods consist of the matriarch and her descendants, which can include up to 4 generations. Once the calf reaches a certain level of development, it may begin hunting for food with the pod members. The young can be seen in these videos trailing blubber in their mouths. They are old enough to enjoy the capture with the group, which had happened earlier on that particular day. After birth, the young killer whale will be nursed by his or her mother and fed a diet of thick, fatty milk, which the calf receives from suckling from its mother's nipple. The fatty milk possesses all the nutrients the child needs during its early stages of life in order to develop into a healthy young dolphin. After a number of years, the calf will eventually develop into a young adult and begin reproducing offspring of its own.
Oh, look, it turned upside down. Oh, wow.
My first encounters with orcas was back in 2010. At that time, they came into the bay and stayed approximately a week, not wandering far from the same area.
Fabulous.
They were an astounding animal to me, these sleek, beautiful mammals that I had seen at Marineland only once before, but even then it made me sad to watch them. But to see them in their natural environment was a thrill above all thrills for me, let alone the people I had on board. During that first year was the first time that I saw these killer whales in action. And what was supposed to be a rare event, only documented 10 times in Newfoundland, these orcas attacked and ate a full-grown minke whale. For what was supposed to be a rare event that was only recorded 10 times, there were 4 attacks that week alone by killer whales in the area that were documented. That statement alone made me realize that there were a lot about killer whales or orcas in this area that was little understood and could use more study. In this footage, orcas mask their hunting, possibly using our boat motors as a screen. A humpback comes into view. It pops out of nowhere and cuts in front of our boat to avoid contact with the orcas.
Now,
Takes a sharp right less than 50 feet in front of us rather than swim through the orcas. Humpbacks have been seen protecting seals and sea lions from orca predation by sheltering them out of their reach on their stomachs while upside down.
they're actually swarming at him, and I think they're trying to attack him.
Groups of humpbacks will protect each other and their offspring from the
Oh
attacks
my God.
of
What's
orcas.
this? What's this? What's this?
By encircling the calf with their snouts out towards the outside of the circle. In another separate encounter, we observed this group of orcas attacking porpoises. They obviously were not hungry or had eaten their fills. The orca group tossed porpoises into the air, bit and raked them over and over again. In these attacks, we have slowed it down so you can actually see the orcas pushing the porpoises out of the water, slapping them, playing with them. In the shot seen here, the orca is punting the porpoise into the air several times. The next shot shows the orca punting the porpoise high into the air and away. Orcas have been known to play with prey and not eat their victims. This seems particularly cruel since orcas are actually a member of the dolphin and porpoise family. The orcas continue to swarm this porpoise, surround it and keep it in their little area. They continue to play with it until they were tired of it. We then retrieved it, and as you can see from the photograph here, it was raked and bitten, but there was no bite marks, any feed marks anywhere on it. We later submitted this porpoise to Department of Fisheries and Oceans for samples and testing. We had at least 6 separate orca encounters this year with groups of 8 to 20. Taken during a hunting session, these orcas are moving with the boat to mask any noise that they make. They don't vocalize during the hunt and use their stealth and their speed to sneak up on their prey, which could be porpoises, dolphins, or other whales. The young calves always seem to give the best display. They were constantly jumping and moving around their mothers or their caretakers and playing with them and around them. The males seem to be all business, all about the hunt and protecting the group.
Jeez. Wow, it's right. Right here alongside the boat. Right here. Right there. Wow. I wish. Either way.
Here's a great shot of the calf and the juvenile together.
Look at that.
Here are some different shots of porpoise toss by these orcas.
All right. All right.
We recorded at least 3 different porpoise attacks during this period on the same day. To anyone with valid concerns of the proximity of orcas to our boat, I can only say we were not in control of the encounter. Trinity Bay is not a dense boat traffic area, so I think these orcas still consider interaction with boats and people an enigma. These orcas moved freely, and we did our best to avoid them cutting engines and stopping where necessary. But as soon as we started up again, there they were. We made sure to give them the space that they wanted. In a recent study conducted by interviewing Inuit, These traditional hunters shared their observation of orcas in the wild. The orcas seem to prefer flesh over blubber as their food source. Orcas drown, attack by biting, chase and wear down their prey, even eating the fins off larger whales such as finback whales and bowheads. They even speed butt larger whales to break ribs, which help to suffocate them. These orcas are feasting upon a carcass of a young fin whale calf, we believe, that was killed earlier that morning. In some of the shots, you can see them with a chunk of flesh in their mouth and diving down to eat it as they come back to the surface. During the feeding process, there seems to be order in the group as to who eats. The large males are absent from these shots, suggesting they may be the first to eat. They appear to be on the far outer edges of the group, protecting and circling the kill. The carcass is just below the surface and out of sight, but the orcas are swarming and taking bits and chunks of flesh and eating as they go. This one just took a chunk out of the carcass, is diving down deep to eat it. Some of my greatest moments in viewing orcas is the pleasure and awe exhibited by our guests. I know that when they leave us, they have become a steward, not only for orcas, but the ocean and its occupants. I also suspect they will never watch a tortured orca at a marine park. With a highly developed social structure and tight family bonds, orcas should never be captured ever again and put on display. I hope everyone becomes a champion to go and see wild orcas and observe them where they belong to be. Real wildlife encounters can be raw and wild in their images. They are true reflections of the creatures in their natural habitats, just like the orcas. When I first began my tours, I had no idea that orcas ventured into Trinity Bay. Since our first encounters, I have looked forward to every encounter since. Since I live in Newfoundland, I feel privileged to view, interact, and share these wildlife encounters. Newfoundland is a special place full of surprises and wonder. I hope all of you can make the trip one day. For those that can't or are waiting for the ideal time, keep watching our Facebook and YouTube posts. It will give you some idea of what we are seeing in real time. In order to observe wildlife at its best, it needs to be observed in its own environment. I encourage everyone to view a lion on safari, view whales and calves where they feed, get the most awesome, genuine, memorable experience that lasts a lifetime. To view something natural once is better than watch something staged 1,000 times. In Newfoundland, the stage is set daily, so please feel free to come and enjoy it with us.
Wow. I wish. Why there? Look at that. All right. All right.
Next on Story Behind the Shot, Icebergs of Trinity and Area 2017 in review. Until next time, I'm Skipper Bob Bartlett, and I'll see you then.